UK has become the first nation in Europe to pass 50,000 COVID deaths. 50,000 COVID deaths. It's the fifth worst in the world, behind the US, Brazil, India and Mexico.
Yesterday, 595 deaths were reported in government figures, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson calling every death a tragedy, saying we mourn everybody who is gone. But is it enough, or should more have been done to prevent the loss of life in the first place? We're joined now by Sir Dave King, who's the former Chief Scientific Advisor and Chair of the Independent SAGE Committee. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. I remember in the distant past, one of our experts saying if we get away with 20,000 deaths, that would be a result. That is the dim and distant past now, isn't it, as we've passed this milestone? How has it come to this?
Ben, it is a tragedy that could have been avoided from the very beginning, and it is simply astonishing that we in Britain, leaders in the fields of epidemiology and medical care and so on, have trailed the rest of the world in the way we've handled this. If we go back to that initial outbreak in Britain, we knew this was coming. We knew what happened in China and Southeast Asia and then in Italy, and we did nothing to prepare for it. We didn't help our hospitals by restocking them with equipment they would need as the epidemic arrived here. We didn't set up a test and trace system so that we could trace everybody who had the disease, who had the symptoms, test them, isolate them, and see that the isolation was done properly. That is, cared for isolation. And that we're still not there. It's astonishing.
So Dave,
here we are.
It's I think it's 8 months or so since the first lockdown. To say that we might have been caught on the hop initially, and the government may be able to turn around and say, look, we just had no idea initially. But certainly this second wave that's coming through, everybody knew what was going to happen. Everybody knew what we could be in for. How has it come to this point where we are still tragically losing people day by day, 590 odd yesterday?
590 odd compared with 1,000 at the worst of the first wave. We are heading towards that number right now. And it is simply incredible. I have to say that setting up the first test and trace system in May this year, which is what the government did, handing it over to private companies with no healthcare experience, in the face of all of the healthcare experience that exists under the National Health Service, under GPs, under the 44 molecular virology labs where the testing could have been done. None of this was brought into play. Instead, we went off into the private sector. I'm not against the private sector, but to create new private sector companies in the middle of an epidemic, drastic epidemic, was absolutely disgraceful. And still they haven't got it on top. So let me ask the government, through you, if I may, what is the end strategy at this point in time? Here we are in the second wave. How do we prevent a third wave from happening? Are we simply hoping that a vaccine will emerge sooner rather than later? That is a really dire way to look forward. Well, we need to isolate everyone with the disease from the rest of the population. And then we can get on with our lives, get on with our economy. I'm pleased to hear that the economy has grown 15%, but it's only grown by that large number because of the massive deficit we took. We took one of the hardest hits in our economy in the world, and we are also amongst the leaders in the number of deaths. These two things are totally correlated. Those who've been saying there's a tension between economy and the managing of this epidemic are simply talking dangerous nonsense. Yeah. And we're still hearing it day after day.
We'd love to put those questions to the government, Sir Dave King, but you may be aware that we are in the midst of a government boycott and we haven't spoken officially to a government minister for 198 days. Frankly, a dereliction of duty and accountability. But Sir Dave King, thank you for talking to us, former Chief Scientific Advisor and Chair of Independent SAGE. Let's talk to Dr. Bharat Pankhania, who is a clinical expert from the University of Exeter, who joins us from Bath. It is a grim milestone, Dr. Pankhania. Sir Dave King, they're saying, what is the end strategy and the possibility of the vaccine? Now, we don't want to not think that the vaccine is the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, that is at least a hope on the horizon. Is that the end strategy, do you think?
No, no, not at all. And I concur with all the comments made by Sir Dave King. It's upsetting to hear that a first world nation like ours can get it so wrong. So a vaccine is in no way a silver bullet. It cannot be, because we have to consider how effective the vaccine will be. And not only how effective, but will it generate immunity in the at-risk group, the very people that we want to save their lives from because they get more severe illness, because they are the same people who don't mount good immunity. And then also there are other things that need to be done, because there will be sporadic infections happening even though people are immunized. Therefore, this is the very important bit. It is now time for the government to say, you are going to do test, trace and isolate locally, because we will get local outbreaks in 12 months, 18 months time. So it is about time we started to prepare for managing this locally by local experts.
Well, I mean, it seems extraordinary that we have left that so late. I mean, we were late to lockdown, we were late on PPE, we were late on testing, we were late on realising that transferring people from hospitals into care homes might, cause terrible problems. And we've been late on local testing and tracing.
It's so unfortunate, because there is a contact tracing team that I lead, and I can honestly tell our viewers and listeners, it is really dynamic. It really works in an excellent manner, because we know the lie of the land. If on a Friday we get to know of a sensitive case in a sensitive area like a nursing home, we don't go home. We make sure that all the contacts in that nursing home are removed from circulation and all is well before we go home. That's what I mean by dynamic local responsiveness, and we can do it. And it's just a shame that we haven't been doing this from the beginning. We need to set up these local tracing teams as well as local resilience in testing, rather than having centralized testing and tracing.
And just we showed those pictures of that couple being reunited in a care home. Too many people have been left without visits from loved ones. Can you see measures changing in order to allow care home visits to go ahead soon?
It is a shame. It really is a shame. We've got our elderly relatives, friends, loved ones, and we can't see them. We have to do everything possible to enable visits to go ahead. It is not good enough for residential nursing homes to say, can't do it, we won't allow it. We have to say, you will make all efforts possible to enable visits to happen, of course, in a safe way. It has to be enabled.